everything I do is kind of because of the autism, because the autism is my brain. Hello lovely humans, welcome to this space on the internet. So I recently got a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, or autism, which had been a long time coming. I knew or at least was quite certain that I was autistic for quite a long time before I actually had the opportunity to be assessed by a psychologist. But regardless, in reflection of that, I thought I'd make this video to highlight some of my autistic traits that were missed throughout my childhood for various reasons. I can't say that they were missed because of one thing or another, because they were noticed. I think the reason why they weren't deemed like autistic is because no one around me actually knew what autism was. I can confirm from research and personal experience that the things I'm about to talk about were because of the autism. Everything I do is kind of because of the autism, because the autism is my brain. I exist in a constant state of autism, but these are some of the main things that I think could have indicated earlier on that I was autistic, and just thought I'd go through some. Okay, so sign number 1. It's like a little combination of similar traits, but just grouping them. I was extremely hyposensitive, I still am and always have been, to pain. I don't really feel pain the same way or to the same extent that a lot of other people do. My threshold for pain is extremely high. This meant that even as an infant, I didn't really cry for any physical discomfort related reason. It was almost always just an emotional expression when I cried. I also have and had really poor interoception, which is one of the senses that allows us to feel what is going on inside of our bodies on a physical level. So things like recognizing when you're hungry or sleepy or need to pee, that's a big one. Those sorts of things. And related to that, I also had no sense of fear or danger, or limited sense of fear or danger, I should say. I think that all of these manifestations have to do with the core trait of I was extremely hyposensitive. It takes a lot of sensory input for me to really register it. So I wouldn't notice if I was hurt. I was also, as we'll get down on the list, extremely clumsy, which means that I was constantly battered and bruised just by walking around and existing. But I didn't notice when I got hurt, or I didn't notice when I was hungry or sleepy, except for the fact that I was also extremely routine bound, which meant that I always slept and ate at the same times. But that's another one later down the list. And I didn't have a sense of fear because I think that's just a common thing in autistic people, is to like accidentally put yourself in dangerous situations because you don't have like an innate sense of danger. But I also think it had to do with the fact that my pain threshold was super high, so things didn't seem dangerous because they didn't have the implication of pain. Sign number 2, I was extremely clumsy and uncoordinated. This goes along with the fact that I had poor proprioception, which, unlike interoception, has to do with your body in space and your sense of motion. And this also meant that I had frequent injuries. So I've always been super clumsy, to the point where it's kind of a pretty noticeable and overarching thing in my daily life. The fact that I drop things all the time and run into things all the time and fall over all the time, my balance is not good. But that's just, I think, part of my sensory processing, because autism. Next, number 3, I was and continue to be extremely routine bound. So even my mom likes to recount that during her pregnancy with me, I was always active, like I would kick her belly at the same times every day and would be inactive at the same times every day. And then as an infant, I was extremely routine bound. I always napped at the same time, ate at the same time, and ate the same things probably. That was just how I was. I was kind of super easy to take care of in that sense because I just did the exact same thing every single day. And then like that continued in various capacities throughout my childhood and even now. When I have a routine, I don't like when it's broken. Even if now I don't have like outbursts maybe I sometimes have outbursts about it, but I think more often it just really messes with my whole body and brain. And then, a few days later, I'll feel it and then not be able to do anything because I'll have a meltdown. And that's something that, because of my hyposensitivity, poor interoception, and something I'll talk about later, my alexithymia, I just don't notice until later when routine breaking causes me significant distress. This also meant that I needed a plan for every day for what we were going to do. So my mom has told me that when we went to the grocery store, she didn't tell me exactly the order of what we were going to do and how we were going to do it when we got to the grocery store. I would have a terrible time and not be very happy at the grocery store. But I tended to do a lot better when she would say, this is the order we're going to go in, and we're going to get these things, and this is how the trip's going to go before we left. I just don't deal very well with change at all. Not even a little bit. It's super bad. That's probably like one of the biggest indicators of my autisticness was my inability to cope with change. I had pretty large meltdowns whenever people mentioned moving. And let it be known, I've moved twice in my life. One of them was 30 feet next door. And the other one was into a house that I'd already been in lots. It wasn't as if these were particularly unfamiliar, they were just different. And I hate moving. It was a huge stressor. I would have nightmares about it as a child. It was just this terrifying thing because of the change that is inherent to being in a different house. And a lot of people, that to them seems like, yeah, it's a transition, but it's negligible. No, I really can't handle change like that, or at least really struggle with it. Okay, I think it's 4. Number 4, I take rules and instructions extremely literally, which can mean that sometimes I misinterpret things. But whenever I was told that this is how something is, or this is what you're supposed to do, I would do it exactly in the literal way it was said, which actually meant that throughout school, teachers tended to like me because I would just do exactly what they told me to do, and I was really good at just reading the instructions and then doing the thing if the instructions were clear enough. Where I ran into trouble was if I misunderstood the instructions because I took them so literally. But one of the anecdotes that came up in my assessment was the fact that when I was younger, we were at the beach. I was at the beach with my brother and my mom, and we were playing on the beach together. But my mom had told me, we don't talk to strangers, no talking to strangers. And my brother, who was younger than me, found these other 2 small children on the beach and started playing with them. And I ran up to my mom and was like, "Mom, my brother is talking to strangers." And I was really concerned, and my mom had to really try and explain to me that that rule doesn't apply to small children on the beach when I'm right here, because I didn't make that distinction, because I took it literally. Number 5, alexithymia, which is not being able to properly feel, process, and express your emotions. Which meant that whenever I was in heightened emotional states, which I think happens quite a lot for me, I have a really, really, really hard time verbalizing them. In fact, I do not. As a child, when I would come home from school, I would have major meltdowns and I'd be crying and I wouldn't be able to explain to anybody why I was upset, because I myself, I don't think, often knew. And then also, if I did say anything, it was always the same thing over and over again. I think one was, "I'm doing everything wrong." And I would just say, "I'm doing everything wrong." And I couldn't elaborate, because I didn't even understand my emotions to the extent that I would need to be able to accurately vocalize those feelings. Which meant that, and means that, now when I am experiencing emotions, I have a very hard time identifying what they are. I can't distinguish between certain emotions. That's really difficult, and it's really difficult for me to explain or describe these emotions and how they feel in my body, which means that I often just don't. I don't talk when I am upset. I just go silent and disengage. When I was younger, I had, let's call it an obsession with numbers, letters, words, especially names, and categorization of these things. So I was typical in the sense that I lined up toys according to size or color or whatever, and that was the only way I really played with toys. I didn't do make-believe with toys so much, I just lined them up, and I think that I'm hyperlexic because I taught myself and learned how to read really early, and I could form sentences and speak really early as well with like a really broad vocabulary. But I was obsessed with numbers. So in any journal I have from when I was younger, I wrote my parents' phone number in it like 50 times on the cover. For no particular reason, I just kept writing it. I had this one little dresser beside my bed that I wrote all over my mom's phone number in Sharpie. All over it. I liked repetition. It soothed the anxiety I felt, but I think I also felt particular anxiety because I needed to know my parents' phone numbers in case I needed to call them. Like, that was an important thing to me. I was also obsessed, like, I collected dolls. I had a lot of dolls, but it's not like I played with these dolls as if they were people. I would just make giant lists of their names, and they were really weird, complicated names that aren't real. And I would just write them down and then line them up in the order I'd written them down. And then put like tick marks beside their names as if they'd done something. My play was a little atypical in that sense because I'm autistic. Oh, I had a sign here that says distraught in response to change, but I think I already covered that in the routine bound thing. I hate change, can't do change, no change. Which I think that my inability to adapt to change was kind of a big indicator as well of the autism living within me, because when in my life I'd go through periods of change, that was when I was most visibly autistic. I would have more meltdowns, I would be more upset a lot of the time and unable to communicate and just blah. Next sign is I would have meltdowns after long days at school and masking. So I am of the breed of autistic that can mask. I want to make a video about this because I don't think I'm that good at masking. However, I think that because of the fact that I'm a girl, not really, but people perceive me as a girl, and my skill set, despite my autism, slotted well into the expectations of academia, at least for a while. It kind of got away from me, but it still worked out pretty well for me in that sense. Because of that, I think that people mistook my quite blatantly autistic traits for anxiety and perfectionism, which it was, but that was because of the autism. So I would often feel like an alien, and to be honest, I think if you asked anybody who's known me for any length of time, I don't think that they would say that me being autistic is a surprise, to be honest, because I was very clear that, so I'm kind of weird. I do weird things, I'm a weird person, and I always kind of felt like an alien, and that was how it was. So I was kind of a quirky friend in that sense anyways, but I think I just owned it in that way. But after long days at school, especially when I was in elementary school, I would come home crying and not able to talk, like I was talking about before. My next one is I had an atypical sense of fashion and I needed to dress myself. I dressed sort of oddly. I would always wear tutus and leotards and gumboots, which leads into my next one because I had a special interest in dance. But I didn't really want other people to control how I dressed. That was a form of expression for me, and to me that really aligns with my expression of autism. And then lastly, I think my first special interest was an interest in dance. I collected dance stuff. Example, I have a lot more, but I collected dance stuff. I wanted to be a ballerina. My mom looked at me like, are you crazy? You can't even walk properly because I was so clumsy. But I joined dance when I was 3 and I've been dancing ever since. So it's been a long-standing interest and I know a lot about it and have done it a lot. So that's my list. Let me know if you have thoughts about my thoughts. You can put them in the comments. I would appreciate that. That's cool. I like talking to you. And otherwise, farewell, and we'll see you next time in this space on the internet.